We begin with breaking news on this Thursday morning. The eye of Hurricane Milton now moving past the Florida peninsula and exiting the state's east coast with 120-mile-per-hour winds, heavy rain, and several tornadoes.
The powerful storm already causing damage and knocking out power for more than 3 million customers. The predicted storm surge up to 13 feet, flooding densely populated areas on the coast, including Fort Myers. The severe flooding reaching far inland as Milton raced across the Florida peninsula. More than 24 tornadoes reported before landfall overnight. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says 9,000 National Guardsmen have been mobilized to respond to the storm, along with 1,400 search and rescue first responders. There are also 50,000 linemen on hand to help restore power to the millions who are now without electricity.
And breaking from the Live Desk, colleagues, so many incredible videos coming across our social media feeds here this morning, giving us a real up-close look at the extensive damage left behind in parts of Florida from this really powerful storm. Let me first take you to St. Petersburg near Tampa. This video captured by a witness shows that large construction crane that collapsed onto a street as Milton unleashed its fury. A TV station in Tampa Bay reports the crane fell off of a building that's been under construction for about 2 years now and would be the tallest building in St. Petersburg. Thankfully, the city says no one was hurt in that. Also in St. Petersburg, look at the roof on Tropicana Field, which is home to the Tampa Bay Rays. The city says no one was hurt when the roof ripped off of the stadium. It served as the home base for thousands of emergency responders who set up camp ahead of Hurricane Milton. We've learned that several essential team members were inside the stadium when this happened. The other big thing that we're watching this morning is the impact on air travel from Hurricane Milton. A live look at bring you of SeaTac International Airport, busy in that departures drop-off area. More than 2,200 flights already canceled from coast to coast this morning, with several Florida airports closed at the moment. Only 15 of those are out of SeaTac. Just check that number during the commercial break. More than 400 flights have already been canceled nationwide for tomorrow, so a big travel impact at the moment.
And that video, Steve, just so shocking.
Unreal.
Tropicana Field and the crane, all of it.
Yeah.
All right, George, Milton moving out, though, now.
Still a hurricane, which is actually very impressive, in a bad way, that it was able to maintain hurricane strength while moving over the entire peninsula.
Yeah.
But it's moving offshore, which is good news. Here's a look at the last 24 hours. Now, it made landfall on Siesta Key last night around 8:30 Eastern time. That would have been 5:30 our time here in the Pacific. It made landfall as a Category 3 with 120-mile-per-hour sustained winds. That means gusts even higher. You can see our icon here, a 1, so it's still a Category 1 hurricane now. The backside rain bands are still lashing the east coast of Florida. Marineland, that's a town north of Daytona Beach, 76-mile-per-hour wind gusts still recently. And toward Cocoa Beach, which is right about here, there's Cape Canaveral, 67-mile-per-hour wind gusts still. So we still have ongoing hurricane conditions for the east coast of Florida. That's why the hurricane warnings are still in effect. Also some flash flood warnings from Daytona Beach toward Sanford, which is on the north side of Orlando. Flood alerts continue for Tampa and especially St. Petersburg. Here's our band of 12 to 14 inches of rain. It kind of extends from Daytona Beach area, the north side of Orlando, and the heaviest rainfall amounts near St. Petersburg, where we had more than 14 inches of rain. So we're going to watch these areas dry out, and coming up we'll talk more about our forecast here in Seattle. It's quiet, but there's a couple things like some patchy fog I want to talk about. Guys?
All right, we'll check back in with you in a little bit. Hurricane Milton comes less than 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene ripped through the south, and the people there still need your help. KOMO's teamed up with the Salvation Army and our parent company to assist with humanitarian relief efforts. Viewers like you have helped raise more than $474,000 through our Sinclair Cares Hurricane Helene Relief Campaign. And that includes a donation of $50,000 from Sinclair. If you want to donate, just scan that QR code on your screen or visit sinclaircares.com online. And thanks to everyone who has donated. With Hurricane Milton now moving off of Florida's coast, Floridians who live in the storm's path have decided to hunker down and ride it out instead of evacuating.
The National News Desk's Jeff Harris spoke with a woman in Tampa who decided to ride out that storm instead of evacuating.
Annie Brand is a lifelong Floridian whose family has lived in the Tampa area for over 2 decades and never left during a storm. She says Hurricane Milton won't be any different, but after her own home flooded during Helene, that almost changed.
Annie Brand and her husband moved to the St. Pete area in December of 2022. Since then, they've been affected by 3 major storms, but the worst by far happened less than 2 weeks ago.
We lost our home a week and a half ago to Helene.
Flooded with over 3 feet of water, sewage, and salt water, Brant says not much was left behind.
We were able to salvage some clothes and some dishes, and we have gutted the entire house.
A lifelong Floridian, Brant is no stranger to riding out hurricanes. She and her husband were in Fort Myers during Ian, a Cat 5 storm 2 years ago, but watching her home get wiped out has started to shift their mindset.
You know, everybody has that mentality, well, it's never going to happen to them, and it can. And so I think we're looking at every storm a little bit differently now.
Since Helene, the two have been living with family close by in Tampa, an area that will be severely impacted by Milton. But instead of leaving, they're riding it out.
We have about 10 family members who are here with us, and we do feel safe.
Brant tells us for over 25 years, they've hunkered down in that house during every storm with no damage, never thinking about evacuating. But Milton did start a conversation.
I believe this is the first storm in decades for my family where they said, you know, maybe we should have just taken a flight out on Sunday.
Located a bit more inland, their biggest worry is wind and falling trees, not necessarily flooding. But regardless, they're taking precautions.
We did make the decision last minute to put up some plywood. So they are covering some bigger windows in the back where we get more of the wind.
So for now, it's a waiting game. But Brant says these back-to-back storms are taking a toll.
I feel like we've been kind of living in a time warp since Helene went through, and then just having to deal with it again and seeing the devastation and literally losing so much that we've lost.
Now, Brant says another big worry with Milton is all the debris that's still scattered on the side of the road from Helene, much of which could very likely get swept up during the storm and cause even more damage. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
Jeff, thank you. Happening now, rescuers are saving pets as well as people from hurricane dangers in the southeast. One dog in Lucky, Florida troopers untied it from a fence as Hurricane Milton approached. Animal shelters in northern states are also lending a helping paw by caring for cats and dogs who were in the path of severe weather. Volunteers are getting supplies for pets and humans to remote areas of North Carolina devastated by Hurricane Helene a couple of weeks ago. Sometimes the help goes the other way. Trained dogs help with search and rescue after all sorts of disasters. And at the Emergency Operations Center in Tampa, the mayor says a cute pup is boosting morale.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Cute
that can make a
pups
big
always
difference.
do that, right? They always
yeah.
give a little morale boost,
That's
for
right.
sure.
There's been a lot of good stories about good Samaritans and neighbors helping neighbors. Yeah.
I always like that mantra of whenever a disaster strikes, like we see down in Florida, always look for those that are going in, because those are the ones that you'll likely see the big stories of people helping out.
Yeah, sometimes in the worst times, people really come together.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's good. That's a good point.
Hurricane Milton unleashing its fury overnight, leaving a trail of destruction behind and millions of people without power, more than 3 million at the moment. Live pictures coming in from Fort Myers this morning. You can see some of the winds that have battered parts of Florida. Parts of Florida have died down this morning in this live picture that's coming in. It looks like there's quite a bit of dirt left behind from some of those winds that swept through that area overnight. I want to show you a new video that was captured inside of a restaurant in Fort Myers, and it shows several feet of water flooding that business overnight. It reached the top of the restaurant's staircase as Milton tore through central Florida. The hurricane made landfall near Siesta Key, Florida as a dangerous Category 3 storm and weakened to a Category 1 as it cut through the state and moved offshore. More than 3 million people are without power statewide, and more than 2,200 flights have been canceled coast to coast, with several Florida airports closed because of that storm this morning.
This morning, federal officials say they have what they need to respond to Hurricane Milton while combating an onslaught of politically motivated misinformation in the wake of Hurricane Helene. FEMA says thousands of personnel are on the ground and that the agency has more than $11 billion in its disaster relief fund. Right now, there's a wave of disinformation amplified by former President Trump's campaign, which spread false claims that funding used to house migrants has come out of FEMA's disaster relief fund. Claims officials on both sides of the aisle and those affected by the storm say aren't true.
A lot of this stuff is not about the people that got impacted. It's about people wanting to make themselves seem important, say stuff that's just outlandish, trying to get clicks and attention that has nothing to do with getting information to the public.
Residents in the storm zone got a $750 payment meant to help people get immediate shelter or food, according to FEMA. Larger grants will be distributed in the coming weeks.
All right, this is some new video coming in from the Pierce County Sheriff's Department this morning. It shows deputies deploying to the southeast with Washington State Task Force 1 FEMA Urban Search and Rescue. Once they get to that region of the country, they will support efforts related to Hurricane Helene from a couple weeks ago, as well as the brand new hurricane that hit Florida overnight, Milton. That's, of course, if those efforts are needed. And back to these live pictures coming in out of Tampa, Florida this morning. Wind still an issue there this morning, even though this hurricane has moved on. Millions of people starting to assess the damage from Hurricane Milton. It made landfall overnight as a Category 3 storm. Millions of people without power this morning. Rescues also taking place in a number of areas as well. The other heartbreaking weather threat that we're seeing is tornadoes. We've learned that 4 deaths have now been confirmed in St. Lucie County on Florida's Atlantic coast, where several tornadoes touched down as Hurricane Milton started lashing that state. These videos are just devastating to see. At one point, it appears several transformers exploded here as a witness shot this video while driving down a road in Wellington, which is near West Palm Beach. It appears here that a massive structure, as I zoom in on this, possibly a roof, fell on top of a boat and several patrol cars in St. Lucie County. The damage here is just extensive looking at that. And then this new video here, as I zoom in on this one, it appears a tornado pushed several cars and trucks right into homes in Palm Beach Gardens, which is near West Palm Beach. The tornado brought down several trees and power lines. Forecasters say tornadoes or twisters can form amid tropical weather. Even though they're not typically very strong, they still pose a deadly threat, and we certainly saw that overnight.
Oh, Steve, that video just wild.
A live look now from a rain-soaked camera in Cocoa Beach, Florida, after it bore the brunt of Hurricane Milton.
Just a few hours ago, this camera was shaking violently as the storm's winds whipped through at more than 120 miles per hour. Milton is already causing catastrophic flooding along the coast. The predicted storm surge expected to reach up to 13 feet in several major cities. We're also hearing at least 19 tornadoes have been reported.
All right, we want to bring in meteorologist George Waldenberger, who's been tracking the latest conditions in Florida and where the storm is right now. George, what are you seeing at this point this morning?
Well, right now I'm looking at the satellite radar, and you can see the last 24 hours of activity. Milton has actually moved offshore after initially making landfall as a Category 3 last night near Siesta Key. Zooming in, actually what we'll see is Milton moving off the coast, and that's good news because it has weakened to a Category 1, but still a Category 1 hurricane after even moving across the entire island. Zooming in, we actually have the back rain bands lashing the east coast of Florida. So Cocoa Beach and Marineland in the last hour or so reporting wind gusts 60, 70 miles per hour. Now on the back side of this, we have a large swath of heavy rain. This rain has accumulated to 12 to 14 inches in spots, and this was one of the main threats that the National Hurricane Center was eyeballing here. And if you looked at their most recent projection yesterday for the risk of flash flooding, there was a band here right along I-4, which is right where the heavy rain set up between Daytona Beach, the north side of Orlando, toward Tampa, St. Petersburg. 12 to 14 inches of rainfall fell. So even after Milton continues to push east, we'll watch this flooding threat. It may take a while to subside in some neighborhoods, ongoing power outages as well. Cleanup is going to take a while. The good news for Florida is that the weather will calm down in what is typically their typical afternoon rainy pattern season, so a little bit of bright news for them in the future.
All right, they certainly need it. George, thank you. Breaking from the live desk, one big issue that we're seeing, excuse me, in addition to all the rescues taking place across Florida, is power outages. More than 3.3 million people without power across the state this morning. That's according to this site that tracks power outages across the country. Incredible new video coming in from Seminole County this morning. Look at this. Down power lines there sparking fires as that camera zooms in. We have seen this very sight in several communities in the aftermath of that powerful storm. In St. Petersburg near Tampa, a witness captured this video after a large construction crane collapsed onto a street as Milton unleashed its fury. The city says nobody was hurt in that. Also in St. Petersburg, look at the roof on Tropicana Field, which is home to the Tampa Bay Rays. The city says no one was hurt when the roof ripped right off of that stadium. This is the aftermath here. It served as the home base for thousands of emergency responders who set up camp ahead of Hurricane Milton. Hurricane Milton comes less than 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene ripped through the south, and the people there still need your help this morning. KOMO has teamed up with the Salvation Army and our parent company to help with humanitarian relief efforts. So viewers like you have helped raise more than $474,000 through our Sinclair Cares Hurricane Helene relief campaign. That includes a donation of $50,000 from Sinclair. If you still want to donate, just scan the QR code on your screen or visit sinclaircares.com.